Could you explore and break down what happened at Sodom and Gomorrah from your unique view on the Bible? It would be great to hear. Thanks for the great content.
Yes, Sodom and Gomorrah is an anomalous story, really, from the book of Genesis. The way the translation rolls at the moment, the Yahweh character takes great offense at the behavior of the people in those cities, which is an odd thing because he hasn't imposed any laws on those cities. They're not people under his charge as such. He's not there leading them, telling them what to do, and they're disobeying him. He just doesn't like how they're behaving. And so there's something slightly out of tune, out of time with the framework for why Yahweh, or El Shaddai, as he introduces himself in that story, goes on and destroys those cities. It follows on from a really interesting encounter between Abraham and Sarah and three visitors. Now, Abraham and Sarah, as the story goes, are an older couple. They're post childbearing, but the reader of the Bible knows that they are actually the progenitors of the Hebrew people. And their names, when we read them against Brahma and Saraswati in the Vedas, suggest they might be a more primordial couple even than that. Brahma and Saraswati, in the Vedic tradition, are the progenitors of humanity. They are the progenitors of the many nations. Abraham, we're told, is the father of many nations, or the many nations. And then there is a supernatural or divine, or perhaps what we would call artificial insemination that results in children and nations issuing from them. What causes this anomalous pregnancy is a close encounter with three entities. Now, it turns out they're not human. At the beginning of the story, they're just reported as three people turning up. But by the time they've moved on, we've worked out they're not human. They are advanced beings of some kind, and they clearly have technology when it comes to pregnancy that Abraham and Sarah knew nothing about. And it took them completely by surprise that postmenopausal Sarah was now pregnant. So that's the story before. There's a conversation between Abraham and one of these three figures who has said he's going to go and destroy these cities because he doesn't like how the people there behave. And then two of those figures turn up and they have an extraordinary effect on the locals. If you could imagine what would happen if Justin Bieber walked through an airport, for instance, and the way he would be mobbed, people trying to tear the t-shirt off his back, that kind of thing. That's what happened to these two figures when they got to Sodom. So clearly they looked human, but they were hot humans, and they had this extraordinary effect on people. And this is all given by the writers, a sort of explanation as to why you'd want to destroy those cities, which again seems a little odd and out of proportion. The way the cities are destroyed is very suggestive to the modern mind of advanced weaponry. If we picture what happens to a city if it is nuked, that's what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah. And there's no explanation of this technology in the text. The context for its destruction is the introduction of this being called El Shaddai. Now, El Shaddai in a lot of Bibles gets translated as the Almighty, but if you go to the most authoritative lexicons, they will tell you honestly that is an invented translation. Brown Driver Briggs will tell you that's an invented translation. Go to the New Jerusalem Bible, and it will say that's a very uncertain translation. Go further into the notes, and they'll tell you it more probably means the powerful one of the mountains, the powerful one of the plains, or possibly the powerful one, the destroyer. And when you look at how El Shaddai behaves in the texts, it's that final meaning that makes sense, because wherever he turns up, whether in the plains or on the mountains, he goes about destroying people. He slaughters people in great numbers. And that's exactly what happens in the Sodom and Gomorrah story. He turns up, introduces himself to Abraham. He says, I'm the powerful one, the destroyer. Walk in front of me. Don't put a foot wrong. And within a couple of chapters, he's destroyed 2 cities. And it's the beginning of stories in the Hebrew scriptures of extraordinary destructions of cities by means that would have been unimaginable to the people of that time. I mean, to have weaponry that could take out a city, we can picture it, we can process that idea, but people 3,500 years ago couldn't. But they just told the stories how their ancestors had remembered them. So that's the context in which I understand that story. I don't really take the top layer as gospel. I don't think it was a punishment for bad behavior. I think there's something else going on here. I think it was El Shaddai who did it. I think it was through technology that it was done. And it's one of those stories in the Bible that clues us that what we're actually looking at is some kind of an invasion and a taking of power by advanced beings with advanced weaponry. Click on the links in the description to watch the full video.